My ex tried stealing custody, then my daughter pulled out a letter that ended the trial. 2 years ago, my ex and I finally ended our marriage after years of walking on eggshells. The divorce itself was messy but manageable. We settled on me having primary custody of our daughter, who was 8 at the time. She's always been the light of my life, smart, sensitive, and incredibly perceptive for her age. Life after divorce wasn't easy, but we were making it work. I threw myself into my job as a project manager, juggling deadlines while making sure I was home for dinner each night. My daughter and I developed our own little routines: Friday movie nights, Sunday morning pancakes, bedtime stories, even though she insisted she was too old for them. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. My ex had visitation every other weekend and seemed content with the arrangement. They'd occasionally be late for pickups or drop-offs, but I tried not to make a big deal of it. Our daughter needed both parents in her life, and I was determined to make co-parenting work despite our history. I even started dipping my toes into the dating pool again. Nothing serious, just coffee meetups that sometimes turned into dinner. My daughter knew I was meeting new people, and she seemed okay with it. Life was finally stabilizing. Then came the bombshell. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon. I had just finished a conference call and was about to head out for a quick lunch when someone knocked on my door. A courier with an envelope. I signed for it absently, thinking it was work-related. It wasn't. My hands started shaking as I read the legal notice. My ex was suing for full custody of our daughter, claiming I was an unfit parent. The accusations were so outlandish I almost laughed, until I realized this was deadly serious. According to the papers, I was emotionally unstable, neglectful, and creating an unsafe home environment. There were claims that I left our daughter alone for long periods, that my home was unsanitary, that I had a parade of romantic partners coming through the house, and that I was emotionally manipulating our daughter against her other parent. It was all lies. Disgusting, calculated lies. I called my ex immediately, my heart pounding in my chest. "What the hell is this?" I demanded when they picked up. "Oh, you got the papers," they replied coolly. "It's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? These are complete lies. You know damn well I've never neglected her. Look, it's what's best for her. She needs stability, and you're just not providing that." "Not providing? Are you serious right now? She's thriving. Her teachers say she's doing great. She has friends. She's happy." "That's your perception," my ex said with that condescending tone I knew all too well. "The court will decide what's best for her." "Why are you doing this?" My voice cracked. "She's finally adjusted to everything. And now you want to upend her life again?" "I'm doing what any good parent would do," they replied. "See you in court." The call ended, and I sat at my desk, stunned. This couldn't be happening, but the papers in my hand proved it was very real. I left work early that day, my mind racing. What would this mean for my daughter? How would I fight these accusations? Could I even afford a lawyer for a prolonged custody battle? That night, after my daughter was asleep, I broke down. The thought of losing her was unbearable. She was my whole world, and the idea that someone could just take her away based on lies left me feeling hollowed out with fear. The next morning, I pulled myself together and started making calls. I needed a lawyer, and fast. After several consultations, I found one who specialized in family law and had a good track record with custody cases. She wasn't cheap, but some things you can't put a price on. "These accusations are serious," my lawyer said during our first meeting, "but they're also vague and without specifics, which actually works in our favor. They're casting a wide net, hoping something will stick." "None of it is true," I insisted. "I've been the primary caregiver since the divorce. I've never missed a school event. I work from home when she's sick. I know the names of all her friends." "I believe you," she said. "But unfortunately, what matters is what we can prove in court. We need to start gathering evidence, school records, testimonials from teachers, documentation of your home life. How can I prove I'm not doing something? It's their word against mine. That's why documentation is key. Start keeping a detailed journal of everything related to your daughter. Every pickup and drop-off, every school event, doctor appointments, everything. We'll also need character witnesses who can attest to your parenting." I left her office with a to-do list and a slightly steadier heart. At least I had a plan now. When I picked up my daughter from school that day, I studied her face carefully. Should I tell her what was happening? My lawyer had advised against alarming her unnecessarily, but said I should be prepared for the possibility that my ex might try to influence her. "How was school, sweetie?" I asked as she climbed into the car. Good. We're doing a science project about ecosystems. She seemed normal, happy even. That sounds fun. Did you have a nice time at your other parents' house this weekend? She shrugged. It was okay. We went shopping for clothes and stuff. Did you talk about anything? About me? I tried to sound casual. She gave me a puzzled look. Not really. Why? Just curious, I said, relieved but still worried. Over the next few weeks, I followed my lawyer's advice religiously. I documented everything, reached out to teachers for letters about my daughter's progress, and asked close friends if they'd be willing to testify about my parenting abilities. I also noticed subtle changes in my daughter after her weekends with my ex. She'd come home quieter, sometimes asking odd questions. Mom, do you think our house is dirty? She asked one Sunday evening. I don't think so, I replied, surprised. Why do you ask? No reason, she mumbled. Another time, do you have a new boyfriend? No, honey. I've gone on a few dates, but there's no boyfriend. You know I'd tell you if there was someone important in my life, okay? It became clear that my ex was planting seeds, laying groundwork for their case. I reported these conversations to my lawyer, who added them to our growing file. Then came the preliminary hearing. My ex and their lawyer presented their case, painting me as an unstable, neglectful parent who prioritized my social life over my child's well-being. My client has serious concerns about the child's welfare, their lawyer stated. There have been instances where the child has mentioned being left alone for hours, where the home is in disarray, and where she has met multiple romantic partners of the custodial parent. I gripped the table, knuckles white, as my lawyer calmly denied each claim and presented our initial evidence, clean home inspection photos, statements from my daughter's teachers about her excellent attendance and participation, and testimonials from friends who regularly interacted with us. But my ex had come prepared. They produced photos of my house on a particularly chaotic morning when we'd overslept and rushed out, leaving breakfast dishes in the sink and laundry unfolded. They had text messages where I'd asked them to keep our daughter an extra hour because I was finishing a work project. Out of context, twisted slightly, these normal moments of a working parent's life suddenly looked suspicious. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, ordered a more thorough investigation before making any decisions. She appointed a guardian ad litem (GAL) to represent our daughter's interests and scheduled a full hearing for 3 months later. Nothing changes with the current custody arrangement until then, she declared, much to my relief. But I expect both parties to cooperate fully with the GAL and any evaluations deemed necessary. Outside the courtroom, my ex caught my eye and smirked slightly. It was a look I knew well from our marriage, the satisfaction of having landed a blow. This is just the beginning, my lawyer warned me as we walked to the parking lot. They're going to dig into every aspect of your life. We need to be prepared for that. I nodded, the reality of what lay ahead sinking in. This wasn't just going to be about presenting the truth anymore. It was going to be a battle against calculated manipulation, and my daughter was caught in the middle. We'll fight this, I said, with more confidence than I felt. I won't let them take her away from me. But as I drove home, the weight of the situation pressed down on me. My ex had always been charming and persuasive, able to twist the truth until even I sometimes questioned my own memories. How would this play out in court? How would my daughter handle being interviewed by strangers about her home life? And most terrifyingly, what if I lost? The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, with my lawyer, with the GL, with a court-appointed psychologist. Each time, I had to recount my parenting style, my relationship with my daughter, my work schedule, my support system. It felt invasive and exhausting. The Gale was a middle-aged man with a gentle demeanor who seemed genuinely concerned about my daughter's well-being. He visited my home, observing our interactions and the living environment. He asked pointed but fair questions, and I tried to answer honestly without letting my fear and anger about the situation show. She seems very comfortable with you, he commented after watching us prepare dinner together, my daughter chattering away about her day at school. We're close, I said simply. We've been through a lot together. He nodded, making notes. She'll need to speak with me privately as well, you understand. My stomach nodded, but I nodded. Of course. Whatever helps you see the truth of the situation. The day the gal interviewed my daughter alone, I waited anxiously in another room, trying not to imagine what questions he was asking her or what my ex might have coached her to say. When they emerged, my daughter seemed subdued but okay. You did great, I told her, hugging her close. Want to get ice cream? Can we? Her face lit up, and for a moment, she was just my little girl again, not a pawn in this awful game. The gal gave nothing away about their conversation, thanking us both and scheduling a follow-up visit for the following week. That night, tucking her in, I wanted desperately to ask what they had talked about, if my ex had been telling her things about me, if she was scared. But I knew better than to put her in that position. Instead, I said, "You know you can always talk to me about anything that's bothering you, right? Anything at all." She nodded, her eyes serious. "I know, Mom. And you know that I love you more than anything in the world." "I know that too." She smiled, then hesitated. "Mom, are you and Dad fighting again?" My heart sank. So she had picked up on the tension. "We have some disagreements about grown-up things," I said carefully. "But none of it is your fault. And none of it changes how much we both love you." She seemed to accept this, but as I kissed her goodnight, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. A wariness in her eyes, as if she was holding something back. The next time she returned from a weekend with my ex, the change was more pronounced. She was withdrawn, less talkative, and kept looking at me oddly, as if trying to reconcile something she'd heard with what she knew to be true. "Is everything okay, sweetie?" I asked as I unpacked her overnight bag. "Yeah," she said unconvincingly. "Did you have fun with your dad this weekend?" She shrugged. "I guess. Did something happen that upset you?" She hesitated, then blurted out, "Dad says you want to move away and take me somewhere far from him. Is that true?" I was stunned. "Absolutely not. I would never do that. We have our home here, your school, your friends." "That's what I thought," she said. But she still looked troubled. It was happening. My ex was trying to turn her against me with lies. The realization made me feel physically ill. I reported this conversation to my lawyer immediately. "It's called parental alienation," she explained grimly. "It's unfortunately common in high-conflict custody cases. We'll add it to our evidence. But it's notoriously difficult to prove unless there's a clear pattern. What can I do to protect her from this? Keep reinforcing your relationship. Don't badmouth your ex, but gently correct misinformation. Document every concerning comment she makes after visits. And most importantly, keep being the stable, loving parent she knows you are." I followed this advice as best I could, but over the next several weeks, the situation deteriorated. My daughter began having trouble sleeping, her grades slipped slightly, and she became more secretive. After each visit with my ex, there would be a new concern, a new seed of doubt planted in her mind about me. The gal continued his investigation, speaking with teachers, neighbors, and family friends. He visited my ex's home as well, though I had no idea what he observed there or what my ex told him. One particularly difficult evening, after a tense handoff where my ex had made pointed comments about my emotional instability within earshot of our daughter, I found her sitting quietly on her bed, writing intensely in a notebook. She quickly closed it when she saw me. "It's private," she said before I could ask. "That's okay," I assured her. "Everyone needs a place for private thoughts." She nodded, looking relieved. "It helps me sort things out when I'm confused." "Are you confused about something?" I asked gently. She looked down at the notebook, then back at me, her young face troubled. "Sometimes people say different things, and I don't know what's true." My heart broke for her. "That must be really hard," I said, sitting beside her but not pushing. "If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here." She nodded but didn't open up further. That night, I cried silently in my bedroom, feeling helpless against the psychological warfare being waged through my innocent child. The next morning, over breakfast, my daughter suddenly asked, "Mom, what's going to happen with the court thing?" I nearly choked on my coffee. "What do you know about that?" "Dad said there's going to be a big meeting where a judge decides if I should live with him instead of you." Taking a deep breath, I explained as gently as I could. "There is a court case, yes. Your dad wants to change our arrangement so that you would live with him most of the time instead of with me." "But I don't want to," she said, her voice small. Relief washed over me, followed immediately by guilt for putting her in this position. "The judge will consider what you want," I assured her, "but also what they think is best for you overall. Try not to worry too much, okay? The grown-ups will figure it out." She nodded, but her eyes were worried. "Will I have to talk to the judge?" "I don't know yet, sweetie. Maybe. Would that scare you?" She thought for a moment. "A little, but I could do it." Her bravery in the face of this adult chaos humbled me. "You're the strongest person I know," I told her. meaning every word. As the court date loomed closer, the pressure intensified. My ex ramped up their campaign, making allegations to the GL about my supposed emotional outbursts and inability to maintain boundaries. They produced carefully curated evidence, out-of-context text messages, statements from acquaintances who hardly knew me, even a report from a private investigator who had apparently been watching my home to document my comings and goings. The gal's preliminary report was frustratingly neutral, acknowledging that both homes appeared suitable and that our daughter was attached to both parents. He noted concerns about communication between us but couldn't substantiate the serious allegations my ex had made. "This is actually good for us," my lawyer insisted when I expressed disappointment. "If he had major concerns about your parenting, he would have stated them explicitly. Neutrality means they haven't found smoking gun evidence against you. But they haven't found evidence of my ex's manipulation either," I pointed out. "True, but burden of proof lies with the party seeking to modify the existing custody arrangement, your ex. If the GAL isn't convinced a change is necessary, that works in our favor." I nodded, trying to take comfort in this legal reasoning while my heart remained twisted with worry. The weekend before the trial, my daughter returned from her visit with my ex looking exhausted and withdrawn. She went straight to her room and stayed there for hours, emerging only for dinner. "Everything okay?" I asked, setting a plate of her favorite pasta in front of her. "I'm just tired," she mumbled, pushing the food around. "Did you have a busy weekend?" She shrugged. "Dad had me practice what to say to the judge." My fork clattered against my plate. "What do you mean, practice?" She looked up, suddenly alarmed, as if realizing she'd said something wrong. "Nothing. I don't want to talk about it." I wanted to press further, but remembered my lawyer's warnings about not putting her in the middle. "That's okay. You don't have to talk about anything you don't want to." After dinner, she retreated to her room again, and I noticed her writing furiously in her notebook. I wondered what she was documenting, what thoughts she needed to sort through. Part of me wanted to read it, to know what was happening in her mind, but I respected her privacy too much to violate it that way. The night before the trial, I tucked her in with an extra tight hug. "I love you no matter what happens tomorrow," I told her. "You know that, right?" She nodded, her eyes serious. "I love you too, Mom. Don't worry, okay?" It was such a role reversal, my child trying to comfort me, that I almost broke down right there. But I held it together for her sake. "I'll try not to," I promised, kissing her forehead. "Sweet dreams." As I left her room, I noticed her reaching for her notebook once more, clutching it like a lifeline. Tomorrow, I thought as I closed her door softly, everything would be decided. Despite my lawyer's preparation, despite the evidence we'd gathered, I was terrified. My ex was persuasive, manipulative, and had always been able to charm authority figures. Would the judge see through it all to the truth? Would I lose my daughter? That night, sleep eluded me completely as I stared at the ceiling, mentally rehearsing testimony and imagining worst-case scenarios. By dawn, I was exhausted but wired, my stomach in knots as I prepared for the day that would determine our future. The morning of the trial arrived with a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away no matter how many deep breaths I took. My daughter and I got ready in near silence, both of us feeling the weight of what was about to happen. I'd arranged for my best friend to take her to school and then bring her to the courthouse in the afternoon, when she might be called to speak with the judge. "You look nice, Mom," she said as I straightened my simple blue blazer, trying to appear both professional and like a caring parent. "Thanks, sweetie. You ready for school?" She nodded, but hesitated by the door. "Mom, what if Dad wins today?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Let's not worry about that right now, okay? The judge is going to listen to everyone and make a fair decision." Her eyes, so much wiser than her 10 years, studied my face. "But what if?" I knelt down to her level. "Then we'll figure it out together. But I promise you, I will always be your mom. And I will always be here for you, no matter what. Nothing can change that." She hugged me fiercely, and I felt something hard press against my side. Her notebook, clutched tightly in her hand as she headed out the door to meet my friend. The courthouse was imposing, all marble and echoing hallways. My lawyer met me at the entrance, her briefcase bulging with our evidence and preparation materials. She looked confident, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be," I replied, trying to steady my breathing. We found our courtroom and took our seats. Minutes later, my ex walked in with their lawyer, looking polished and composed in a crisp suit. They didn't acknowledge me, but I could feel their smug confidence radiating across the room. When the judge entered, we all stood. She was the same stern woman from our preliminary hearing, her face giving nothing away as she reviewed the files before her. "This is a hearing to determine modification of the existing custody arrangement," she began. "I've reviewed the gal's report, the psychological evaluations, and all submitted evidence. Let's proceed with opening statements." My ex's lawyer went first, painting a picture so distorted I barely recognized myself in it. According to them, I was emotionally unstable, inconsistent with boundaries, and more concerned with my social life than my daughter's well-being. They spoke of documented instances of neglect and concerning patterns of behavior without offering specifics. My lawyer countered with the reality: I was a devoted parent who had been our daughter's primary caregiver since birth. She highlighted my consistent involvement in school activities, the stable home environment I provided, and my willingness to facilitate a relationship with my ex despite the difficulties. "The evidence will show," she concluded, "that the current arrangement is working well for the child, and that these proceedings are not about her best interests, but about control and retaliation." My ex's lawyer called their first witness, my ex themselves. They took the stand with that familiar air of wounded righteousness I remembered so well from our marriage. "I've been increasingly concerned about my child's well-being," they began, voice dripping with manufactured sincerity. "She comes to my home exhausted, sometimes unwashed, often with homework incomplete." The lies continued, each one more outrageous than the last. According to my ex, our daughter had confided feelings of neglect, had mentioned being left alone for hours, had expressed anxiety about the strange people coming and going from our home. Their lawyer produced photographs: a sink full of unwashed dishes, an overflowing laundry basket, a takeout container on the counter. Normal scenes from any busy household, presented as evidence of chaos and neglect. My lawyer objected repeatedly to hearsay and leading questions, but the damage was being done. The judge's expression remained neutral, but I felt sick watching this performance. During cross-examination, my lawyer did her best to expose the inconsistencies and exaggerations. "These photos," she said, holding them up. "When were they taken?" "During my visits to pick up my daughter," my ex replied smoothly. "All on the same day?" "No, over time." "And did you take photos on days when the house was tidy? When dinner was cooking? When homework was completed?" My ex shifted uncomfortably. "I documented what concerned me." "Selectively documented," my lawyer corrected. "Did you ever express these concerns directly to my client before filing for custody modification?" They wouldn't have listened. "So that's a no. You didn't try to co-parent through these supposed issues before escalating to legal action?" My ex's carefully constructed facade began to show cracks under my lawyer's precise questioning. They became defensive, then combative, insisting they had tried everything before resorting to court. Their lawyer called two more witnesses: a neighbor who had seen me arguing with my daughter once in our driveway, about homework, a normal parent-child disagreement, and a teacher who reluctantly confirmed there had been a few instances of incomplete homework, but quickly added that this was not unusual and my daughter was generally a good student. Then it was our turn. My lawyer called my best friend, who testified about the stable, loving home environment she'd observed over years of close friendship. She described how attentive I was to my daughter's needs, how I balanced work with parenting, and how my social life was modest and never interfered with my responsibilities. "Have you ever observed anything that caused you concern about their parenting?" my lawyer asked. "Never," my friend stated firmly. "They're the most dedicated parent I know." Next came my daughter's previous teacher, who spoke glowingly about my involvement in the classroom, my attendance at every parent-teacher conference, and my daughter's adjustment following the divorce. "In your professional opinion," my lawyer asked, "did you ever have concerns about the child's well-being in her current living situation?" "None whatsoever," the teacher replied. "She's a well-adjusted, happy child with the normal ups and downs all kids experience." Finally, it was my turn to testify. As I took the stand, I caught my ex's eye momentarily. There was something calculating in their gaze that sent a chill through me. I spoke as calmly and honestly as I could about our life together, our routines, how I'd worked to maintain stability for our daughter through the divorce. I addressed the allegations head-on, explaining the context behind the misleading photos and denying the more outlandish claims. "Have you ever left your daughter alone for extended periods?" my lawyer asked. "Never. The longest I've left her alone was perhaps 15 minutes when I ran to the corner store while she was doing homework." She has my cell number memorized and knows the neighbors to go to in an emergency. Have you had multiple romantic partners visiting your home? Since the divorce, I've gone on perhaps 5 or 6 dates total. My daughter has met exactly one of these people, briefly, when he came to the door to pick me up. She was with a babysitter for the evening. When my ex's lawyer cross-examined me, their strategy became clear. Twist innocent situations into something sinister, take normal parenting challenges and frame them as failures. Isn't it true that you've been late picking up your daughter from school on multiple occasions? They asked sharply. I've been late twice in 2 years, I corrected. Once due to a car breakdown, once due to a work emergency. Both times I called the school and made arrangements. And your work often takes precedence over your daughter's needs, doesn't it? Absolutely not. I've structured my entire career around being available for her. I work from home when she's sick, use flex time to attend school events, and have turned down promotions that would have required more travel. The questioning continued in this vein, trying to paint me as career-obsessed, disorganized, emotionally volatile. I remained calm, correcting mischaracterizations and providing context, but it was exhausting to have my parenting scrutinized through such a distorted lens. By mid-afternoon, both sides had presented their evidence and witnesses. The judge called a brief recess before hearing from the GAL and potentially from our daughter. In the hallway, my lawyer squeezed my arm reassuringly. You did great. Their case is full of holes and exaggerations. But will the judge see that? I whispered, watching my ex huddled with their lawyer across the corridor. I think so. The gal's report doesn't support their allegations, and your witnesses were solid. When court resumed, the GL took the stand and summarized his findings. His testimony was frustratingly balanced, acknowledging the strengths of both households while noting the high level of conflict between us as parents. In your observation, the judge asked, is there any substance to the allegations of neglect or unsafe conditions in the current custodial home? The gal hesitated, then replied, I saw no evidence of neglect or unsafe conditions. The home appeared appropriate and the child well cared for. I felt a surge of relief, until the judge asked her next question. And did the child express a preference regarding her living situation? She was conflicted, the GL said carefully. She expressed love for both parents but seemed reluctant to discuss certain topics, particularly regarding changes to the current arrangement. My ex's lawyer pounced on this. Reluctance that might suggest coaching or fear of repercussions from expressing her true wishes? The gal frowned. I couldn't say that definitively. Children in high-conflict custody situations often feel caught in the middle and are cautious about what they say. The judge nodded thoughtfully. I think I'd like to speak with the child myself. In chambers. Is she present? My lawyer confirmed that my friend had brought her and she was waiting outside. Very well. I'll speak with her privately with just the court reporter present. We'll resume afterward for closing arguments. My heart raced as my daughter was escorted into the judge's chambers. What would she say? Had my ex's coaching influenced her? Would she feel pressured to say what she thought the judge wanted to hear? The wait was excruciating. My ex seemed unconcerned, occasionally whispering to their lawyer with small smiles. I sat rigid, focusing on breathing slowly to calm my racing thoughts. After what seemed like an eternity but was probably only 20 minutes, the judge returned to the courtroom. My daughter wasn't with her. She'd been taken to a waiting area to avoid hearing the remainder of the proceedings. The judge's expression gave nothing away as she called for closing arguments. My ex's lawyer went first, summarizing their case for a change in custody, emphasizing their client's concerns and the supposed evidence of my inadequate parenting. My lawyer countered forcefully, pointing out the lack of substantive evidence for their allegations, the stable and loving environment I'd maintained, and the potential harm to our daughter from disrupting her current situation. Your Honor, she concluded, this case presents no compelling reason to modify the existing arrangement, which has served the child well for 2 years. The petitioner has presented selective and misleading evidence in an attempt to gain control, not out of genuine concern for the child's well-being. The judge thanked both sides and announced she would take a short recess to consider her decision, rather than delaying her ruling to another day. I was both grateful for the quick resolution and terrified of what it might be. In the hallway, I paced anxiously while my lawyer tried to reassure me. The judge seems thorough and fair, she said. She'll see through the manipulation. But what if she doesn't? What if my daughter said something that made her believe my ex? Before she could answer, we were called back into the courtroom. My legs felt like lead as I walked to my seat. This was it, the moment that would determine our future. The judge adjusted her glasses and looked at both of us sternly. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today, as well as the gal's report and my conversation with the child. Custody determinations are never taken lightly, and the court's primary concern is always the best interest of the child. I held my breath. In this case, I find the petitioner's evidence lacking in substance. The allegations of neglect and unsafe conditions are not supported by objective observation or third-party testimony. The current custodial parent has demonstrated consistency, involvement, and appropriate parenting. My ex's face darkened as the judge continued. However, I am concerned about the level of conflict between the parents and its potential impact on the child. During my conversation with her, she appeared caught in an uncomfortable position between two adults she loves. The judge paused, and my heart sank. Was this leading to a compromise that would still reduce my time with my daughter? In fact, the judge continued, her tone shifting slightly, the child was quite distressed about something she wanted to share with me. I felt a chill run down my spine. What had happened in that room? She brought with her a notebook, the judge said, holding up a familiar spiral-bound book, my daughter's private journal. She asked me to read certain passages she had written. My ex suddenly looked uneasy, shifting in their seat. Normally, I would be hesitant to consider such evidence without proper submission through counsel. However, given that it came directly from the child during our conversation and speaks directly to matters relevant to these proceedings, I made an exception. The judge opened the notebook to a marked page. In these entries, dated over the past 3 months, the child has documented in remarkable detail conversations with the petitioner, where she was explicitly instructed on what to say to the GL, to her teachers, and potentially to this court. My ex's lawyer leaned over to whisper something urgently, but my ex brushed them off, face now pale. The child records being told, and I quote, "You need to tell them mom leaves you alone all the time, and if you want to keep living with me, you have to make mom sound bad." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. I felt simultaneously vindicated and horrified, relieved the truth was coming out but devastated that my daughter had been subjected to such manipulation. There are multiple such entries, the judge continued, her voice now cold, including specific instructions on what to say about the custodial parent's home, routine, and behavior. The child also expresses her confusion and distress at being asked to lie about a parent she loves. She closed the notebook and fixed my ex with a stern look. This court takes a very dim view of attempting to manipulate a child and the legal process in this manner. It represents a disturbing lack of regard for the child's emotional well-being, and calls into serious question the petitioner's judgment and fitness as a parent. My ex stammered, "Your Honor, I never." "Save it," the judge cut them off. The child's documentation is detailed and credible, with dates, times, and specific quotations that would be difficult for a child her age to fabricate. Turning to address us both, the judge delivered her ruling. The petition for modification of custody is denied. The current arrangement will remain in place, with one modification. The petitioner's visitation will now be supervised until such time as they complete parenting classes and therapy, focusing on appropriate boundaries and co-parenting. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only had my ex's attempt failed, but their visitation was now being restricted. Furthermore, the judge continued, the court orders the petitioner to pay all legal costs associated with these proceedings, as they were initiated in bad faith with deliberate attempts to mislead the court. My ex's face contorted with rage, but their lawyer placed a restraining hand on their arm. "This court is adjourned," the judge declared, bringing down her gavel. As we exited the courtroom, my lawyer was beaming. "That notebook was the game changer we needed. Your daughter is incredibly brave." I was still processing what had happened. I had no idea she was documenting everything. "She's been carrying that notebook everywhere for months. Children see and understand more than we give them credit for," my lawyer said. "She found her own way to protect herself and you." My ex stormed past us, hissing, "This isn't over," before their lawyer hurried them away. But it was over. My daughter had ended it with her truth. When I saw her in the waiting area, I hugged her tightly, tears streaming down my face. "You did it, sweetie. You saved us." She looked up at me, serious but relieved. "I just wrote down what was true. Dad told me to lie. But you always said lying is wrong." "It is," I agreed, my heart swelling with pride at her moral clarity in such a difficult situation. "What you did was very brave. I'm so sorry you were put in that position." She shrugged with the resilience only children possess. Can we go home now? I'm hungry. I laughed through my tears, the simple question grounding me back in our normal life, the life we could now continue without this shadow hanging over us. Absolutely. Let's go home. In the weeks that followed, there were still details to sort out. My ex began the required therapy and parenting classes, seething but compliant. The supervised visitation was awkward at first, but gradually, my daughter reported that things were okay during her time there. The notebook became a symbol in our home, not just of our legal victory, but of the importance of truth and of finding your voice even when scared. I bought my daughter a new, prettier journal with a lock, telling her that her thoughts would always be her own, but that I was proud of her for speaking up when it mattered most. One evening, as I tucked her in, she asked a question that had clearly been on her mind. Mom, is Dad a bad person? I considered carefully before answering. No, sweetie. Your dad isn't a bad person, but they made some bad choices. Sometimes adults get so focused on what they want that they forget to think about what's right or how their actions affect others. She nodded solemnly. Like when they told me to lie about you. Yes, exactly like that. But you know what? You didn't let anyone make you do something you knew was wrong. You followed your heart and did what was right, even though it was scary. That makes you one of the bravest people I know. She smiled at that, snuggling deeper under her covers. I just wrote everything down because I was confused and sad. I didn't know it would help in court. Sometimes the truth is the most powerful thing there is, I told her, kissing her forehead. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's a new day. As I closed her door and headed to my own room, I felt the weight of the past months finally lifting. We'd been through a storm, but come out stronger on the other side. My ex's attempt to take her from me had failed, and ironically, had only cemented the trust and honesty between my daughter and me. There would be challenges ahead, of course. Co-parenting with my ex wouldn't suddenly become easy, and my daughter would still have to navigate her relationship with both of us. But for now, our home was secure, our bond unbroken, and our truth had prevailed. All because my brave, perceptive daughter had picked up a pen and written down what she knew was right. It's been almost a year since the court case that nearly tore my daughter away from me, and I figured it was time for an update. So much has happened, both good and bad, and writing it all down feels like the final step in closing this chapter of our lives. The days immediately following the trial were surprisingly quiet. My ex disappeared completely. No calls, no texts, not even to check on our daughter. Their lawyer reached out to coordinate the supervised visitation, but otherwise, radio silence. At first, I was relieved. We needed time to heal and adjust after the stress of the court battle. My daughter seemed lighter somehow, as if the burden of keeping those secrets had been physically weighing her down. We celebrated our victory quietly with ice cream sundaes and a movie night, and I let her pick a new bedspread for her room, a small gesture to mark our fresh start. Do you think Dad's mad at me? She asked that night as I tucked her in, her face serious in the soft glow of her night light. Probably, I answered honestly, but that's not your problem to fix. You did nothing wrong by telling the truth. She nodded, seeming to accept this. Will I still see Dad? Yes, but it'll be a little different for a while. There will be another adult there during your visits, someone whose job is to make sure everything stays positive and safe. She considered this. Like a referee? I smiled. Something like that. 2 weeks later, the supervised visitation began. My ex had arranged for the sessions to take place at their parents' house, with a professional supervisor present. I was nervous dropping her off that first time, watching her walk up to the door with her small overnight bag. Call me if you need anything, I reminded her. Anytime. I know, Mom, she said with that exasperated preteen tone creeping into her voice. I'll be fine. The supervisor, a kind woman in her 50s with decades of experience, reassured me. She'll be all right. I'll be with her the entire time. When I picked her up the next day, she seemed okay, not thrilled, but not upset either. How was it? I asked, trying to sound casual. She shrugged. Weird. Dad was really quiet. We played board games with Grandma and watched a movie. The lady sat and watched us the whole time. Over the next few visits, a pattern emerged. My ex was cold but civil, going through the motions without any real engagement. According to the supervisor's reports, there were no further attempts to manipulate our daughter or speak negatively about me, but there was also little warmth or proper parenting. Then, about 6 weeks after the trial, I received a call from my lawyer. You need to come to my office, she said, her voice tense. There's been a development. My stomach dropped. What kind of development? Is it bad? It's complicated. Better discussed in person. I arranged for my daughter to go to a friend's house after school and drove straight to my lawyer's office, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Had my ex found some legal loophole? Were they filing a new petition? My lawyer wasn't alone when I arrived. A stern-looking man in a suit stood as I entered. "This is Detective Morgan," she introduced him. "He's with the Special Victims Unit." My confusion must have shown on my face. "Please, sit down," my lawyer said gently. The detective cleared his throat. "I'm investigating a case involving your ex-spouse. During our investigation, your name came up as someone who might have relevant information." "What kind of case?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He exchanged a glance with my lawyer. "Child endangerment and potential abuse. Not involving your daughter," he quickly added, seeing my expression, but another minor. Relief flooded me, followed immediately by guilt for feeling relieved. "Who?" "I can't share all the details of an ongoing investigation," the detective said carefully, "but it involves the child of your ex's new partner." I hadn't even known my ex was seeing someone seriously, let alone someone with a child. "The allegations," he continued, "involve inappropriate discipline methods and creating a psychologically harmful environment. Given the manipulation documented in your custody case, we're exploring potential patterns of behavior." I spent the next hour answering the detective's questions about my ex's parenting style, temperament, and any concerning behaviors I'd witnessed during our marriage. I tried to be fair and factual, but the more I talked, the more I recognized patterns I'd normalized during our relationship: the mind games, the emotional manipulation, the need for control. "Would you be willing to provide a formal statement?" the detective asked finally. "And would you allow us to review the court transcripts from your custody case?" I agreed without hesitation. Whatever had happened, another child might be at risk, and I couldn't turn my back on that. Over the next few months, fragments of information reached me. My ex's new relationship had ended explosively. There was a restraining order involved. The supervised visitation with my daughter continued, but my ex became increasingly distant, often canceling at the last minute or cutting visits short. One rainy afternoon in November, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Don't hang up," my ex said immediately, their voice strained. "I just need 5 minutes." I almost ended the call, but curiosity won out. "I'm listening." "I'm moving," they said. "Taking a job out of state. I wanted to tell you before I told her." I sat down slowly. "When?" "End of the month." It's a fresh start." The implications hung in the air between us. Moving away meant effectively removing themselves from our daughter's life, at least on a regular basis. "What do you want me to say?" I asked finally. "Congratulations? I want you to understand this isn't about abandoning her," they said, defensiveness creeping into their tone. "It's complicated. After everything with the court case, and then this mess with your ex-partner's child?" I finished when they trailed off. A sharp intake of breath. "You know about that some?" "Enough." "It's all lies," they hissed. "Just like you turned our daughter against me with lies." The familiar twisting of reality made me sigh. Some things never changed. "I never lied," I said calmly. "And neither did she. That's actually the whole point. Whatever. I didn't call to argue. I just thought you should know I'm leaving. I'll pay child support, of course, but the visitation schedule will need to change." "To what, exactly? Maybe holidays? Summer vacation? We can work it out." After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, processing the news. Part of me was relieved. Life would certainly be simpler without navigating the supervised visits and walking on eggshells. But another part ached for my daughter, who despite everything, still loved her other parent. Breaking the news to her was as difficult as I'd feared. "But why does Dad have to move so far away?" she asked, tears welling in her eyes. "Is it because of me? Because of what I wrote in my notebook?" "No, sweetie, absolutely not," I assured her, pulling her close. "This is about Dad's life and Dad's choices. It has nothing to do with you." "But I won't see Dad anymore," she sniffled. "You will, just not as often. There will be holidays, video calls, summer visits maybe." She pulled back and looked at me, her young face suddenly serious. "Is it because Dad got in trouble for being mean to that other kid?" I froze. "What do you know about that?" She shrugged. "I heard Grandma talking about it on the phone when I was there. She sounded really mad at Dad. Kids. They always hear more than we think they do." There was a situation with another child, I said carefully. And yes, your dad might be in some trouble over it, but that's all I know. And it's not something you need to worry about. She considered this, then asked in a small voice, was Dad mean to that kid like when Dad told me to lie about you? My heart broke for her, connecting those dots with her limited understanding. I don't know all the details, I said gently. But yes, it might be something like that, and that's why I'm so proud of you for being brave and telling the truth. You might have helped protect someone else. The move happened quickly after that. My ex left town with minimal fanfare, promising to call our daughter regularly. The supervised visits ceased, replaced by weekly video calls that gradually became less frequent. In December, my lawyer called with news that sent shockwaves through our already altered landscape. Your ex has been formally charged, she told me. With what? I asked, stepping outside so my daughter wouldn't overhear. Child endangerment and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. The details are sealed because it involves a child, but from what I understand, they were coaching their partner's child to falsely report abuse against the child's other parent, similar to what they attempted with your daughter. I leaned against the wall, stunned. Oh my God, there's more, my lawyer continued. The prosecutor wants to speak with your daughter. Absolutely not, I said immediately. She's been through enough. I understand your concern, but this could be important. The pattern of behavior with multiple children strengthens their case significantly. She's 10 years old. I won't put her through more trauma by making her testify against her parent. My lawyer sighed. I anticipated you'd feel that way. The good news is, they may not need her testimony. The court records from our case might be sufficient to establish the pattern. Let me see what I can negotiate. True to her word, my lawyer worked out an arrangement where the prosecutor could use the court transcripts and notebook entries, without requiring my daughter to appear or give further testimony. I was immensely relieved. January brought my ex's plea deal, guilty to lesser charges in exchange for mandatory counseling, probation, and parenting classes. The court also ordered no unsupervised contact with any minor children, including our daughter, for at least 2 years. When I explained this development to her in age-appropriate terms, she surprised me with her resilience. So the visits with the referee lady would have had to continue anyway, she reasoned. That's right. She thought for a moment. And now that Dad lives far away, would I have had to go there and stay with a stranger watching us the whole time? Probably something like that, yes. She nodded decisively. That would have been weird. Maybe it's better this way, with just video calls for now. Her practical assessment made me smile, though my heart still ached for what she'd lost. The uncomplicated relationship with a parent that every child deserves. As winter turned to spring, our lives settled into a new normal. My ex's video calls dwindled to once every few weeks, then monthly. Child support payments arrived regularly, though, one small mercy in the situation. My daughter began seeing a child therapist who specialized in family conflicts, a decision I wish I'd made sooner. The changes in her were subtle but significant. Fewer nightmares, more confidence, a willingness to express her emotions instead of bottling them up. Mom, she said one evening as we walked our newly adopted rescue dog, my therapist says what Dad did to me has a name. It's called parental alienation. I glanced at her, surprised by the technical term. That's right. It's when one parent tries to turn a child against the other parent. She nodded thoughtfully. She says lots of kids go through it, but many don't have proof like I did with my notebook. The mention of the notebook, now tucked away in my lawyer's office as evidence, still sent a pang through me. That's unfortunately true. I've been thinking, she continued, her face serious beyond her years. When I grow up, maybe I could help other kids who are caught in the middle like I was. Tears pricked my eyes. You'd be amazing at that. The dog tugged at his leash, breaking the moment, and she laughed, running ahead with him. Watching her, I felt a surge of gratitude for her resilience and compassion that somehow remained intact despite everything. In April, I received an unexpected email from a family law advocacy group. They were putting together a resource guide for parents and children navigating high-conflict custody situations, and wanted to include our story, anonymously, of course. Apparently, my lawyer had mentioned our case to a colleague involved with the organization. After careful consideration and discussion with my daughter, I agreed to be interviewed. The experience was surprisingly cathartic, transforming our painful ordeal into something that might help others. What advice would you give parents facing similar situations? The interviewer asked. Document everything, I said without hesitation. Trust your instincts about your child's behavior changes, and make sure they have a safe space to express their feelings without fear of disappointing either parent. And what about the children caught in the middle? I thought of my daughter's notebook, her small act of self-preservation that had changed everything. Find your voice, even if it's on paper. Your feelings matter. Your truth matters. And none of the adult conflict is your fault or your responsibility to fix. The resource guide was published in June, and the response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from parents and professionals alike, thanking us for sharing our experience and offering solidarity. One email in particular caught my attention, from a judge who specialized in family court. Your story has prompted me to reconsider how we evaluate children's voices in custody proceedings, she wrote. Too often, we rely on adult interpretations rather than creating safe, direct channels for children to express their experiences. I'll be recommending changes to our court's procedures based partly on the insights from your case. I showed the email to my daughter, explaining its significance in simple terms. See? Your brave choice is helping change how things work for other kids. She beamed with pride, then asked, "Can I get another dog to celebrate?" I laughed. Nice try. One rescue pup is plenty for now. Summer arrived, and with it, the question of vacation visitation with my ex. Despite living in another state for over 6 months, they had made little effort to arrange the extended visit mentioned when they moved. 3 weeks before summer break, they finally called. "I'd like to have her for 2 weeks in July," they said, sounding distracted. "I've cleared it with my probation officer and can arrange for the supervision requirements." Something in their tone set off alarm bells. "Have you talked to her about this? She hasn't mentioned you discussing it." A pause. "No, I thought I should confirm with you first. And where would she be staying? Who would be supervising?" "I've rented a place near the beach. There's an agency that provides approved supervisors." I took a deep breath. "Look, I'm not trying to be difficult, but she hasn't seen you in person for months. Going from occasional video calls to a 2-week stay is a big jump. Maybe we should start with something shorter? Are you denying my court-ordered visitation rights?" Their voice took on that familiar edge. "No, I'm suggesting we modify the approach based on what would be best for her. Maybe start with a long weekend?" "This is ridiculous. I've already made arrangements. Without consulting me or her." That's the problem. The conversation deteriorated from there, ending with them threatening to take me back to court for interfering with visitation rights. The next day, I received a formal email from their lawyer requesting the 2-week July visitation, with detailed plans for accommodation and supervision. I forwarded it to my lawyer, who called me promptly. "Let me handle this," she said. "I'm going to request a modified visitation plan that builds up gradually, starting with day visits before moving to overnights. It's a reasonable request given the circumstances, and I think the court would support it." True to her word, she negotiated a compromise. My ex would come to our city for a long weekend, spending supervised time with our daughter during the days and staying in a hotel at night. If that went well, we'd arrange a longer visit later in the summer. When I explained the plan to my daughter, she seemed relieved. "That's better than going to Dad's new place right away. I was worried about staying with someone I don't know watching us all the time." The visit itself was awkward but uneventful. My ex seemed preoccupied and made little effort to connect meaningfully with our daughter. The supervisor reported that most of their time was spent at movies or malls, activities that required minimal interaction. "Dad seemed different," my daughter observed after they left, "like they didn't really want to be here." I chose my words carefully. Sometimes people have a lot on their mind that has nothing to do with us. "Dad's going through some difficult things right now." She nodded thoughtfully. "I don't think I want to go stay at Dad's place this summer. Maybe next year when things are more normal." I hugged her, amazed at her insight. "We can definitely talk to Dad about that." To my surprise, when I relayed her feelings, my ex didn't push back. "That's probably for the best," they said. "Things are complicated here right now with the court requirements and work." It was the first reasonable conversation we'd had in years, and it gave me a glimmer of hope that maybe, with time and the consequences they were facing, they might develop some self-awareness. By the end of summer, an unexpected opportunity arose at work, a promotion that would involve relocating to another city about 3 hours away. In the past, I would have declined immediately, unwilling to disrupt the custody arrangement. Now, with my ex in another state and minimal in-person visitation happening, it seemed like a possibility worth exploring. I discussed it extensively with my daughter, explaining the positives: better job, nicer schools, being closer to my sister and her cousins, and the challenges, new environment, leaving friends. To my surprise, she was enthusiastic about the idea. I'd get to see my cousins more? She asked excitedly. And we could bring our dog? Yes to both, I assured her. But it would mean starting at a new school, making new friends. She considered this. That would be hard at first. But maybe it would be good to have a fresh start where people don't know about all the court stuff and Dad's problems. Her wisdom continually amazed me. That's a really mature way of looking at it. She shrugged. My therapist says sometimes a change of scenery can help us leave difficult memories behind. With her on board, I accepted the position. My lawyer helped me navigate the legal requirements of relocating with a custody agreement in place, but with my ex living out of state and having such limited visitation, there were surprisingly few hurdles. They raised no objections to the move, asking only that we maintain the current schedule of video calls. As we packed up our house in October, almost exactly a year after the tumultuous court case, I found myself reflecting on how dramatically our lives had changed. The custody battle that had once threatened to tear us apart had ultimately led to unexpected freedom and opportunities. My daughter found her old notebook while cleaning out her desk drawer, not the one from the trial, but an earlier one where she'd started documenting her feelings. Can I burn this? She asked, holding it up. My therapist said sometimes rituals help us let go of bad memories. That weekend, we had a small ceremony in the backyard. She tore out pages from the notebook and watched them curl and blacken in a small fire pit, the words that had captured her confusion and pain turning to ash. I don't need these anymore, she said firmly, but I'm going to keep writing in my new journal. My therapist says it's good to have a place for private thoughts. She's right, I agreed. Writing helped you find your voice when you needed it most. The move to our new city happened smoothly. My daughter adjusted to her new school with typical resilience, quickly making friends and joining the science club. My sister lived nearby, providing both of us with family support we'd been missing. My ex's involvement continued to wane, video calls becoming less frequent despite my gentle reminders and encouragement. By Christmas, they called just once a month, conversations becoming increasingly superficial. It saddened me for my daughter's sake, but she seemed to be taking it in stride. Dad's not very good at being a parent from far away, she observed after a particularly brief call. But that's okay. I have you, and Aunt Karen, and my cousins, and my friends, and Buddy, she added, patting our dog's head. The advocacy work I'd begun with the resource guide expanded unexpectedly. I was invited to speak at a conference for family law professionals about the impact of high-conflict custody battles on children. My daughter encouraged me to accept. You can help other kids like me, she said. Just make sure you don't use my real name in your stories. Promise, I said, touching her nose. You'll always be my brave daughter who found her voice. She rolled her eyes but smiled. That's so cheesy, Mom. In January, nearly 15 months after the trial, the final pieces fell into place. My ex called with news that shaped our future definitively. I'm taking a job overseas, they said. 2-year contract, possibly extending longer. I sat down, absorbing the implications. What about visitation? Let's be realistic. It hasn't been working well even with me in the country. I'll come back for a week or two in the summer if I can, and we'll keep up the video calls. And child support? I asked bluntly. That won't change. I've already arranged for the payments to continue automatically. After the call, I found my daughter in the backyard, throwing a ball for the dog. I sat on the porch steps, patting the space beside me. Dad called, I began. They're moving overseas for work. She caught the ball. Buddy returned and held it, considering this information. For how long? At least 2 years, maybe longer. She threw the ball again before asking, will I still get to see Dad sometimes? They mentioned coming back for visits in the summer, and continuing the video calls. She nodded slowly. I figured something like this might happen. Dad doesn't really try very hard to be part of my life anymore. The mature observation broke my heart a little. I'm sorry, sweetie. You deserve more. She shrugged, but I could see the hurt beneath her casual exterior. It's okay. I've got you. And honestly, it's kind of a relief not having to worry about court stuff or supervised visits or Dad trying to make me say things that aren't true. We sat in silence for a moment, watching Buddy chase a squirrel up a tree. You know, I said carefully, it's okay to feel sad about Dad moving even farther away, even if things have been complicated between you. She leaned against my shoulder. I am sad, a little, but mostly I'm just glad we're here, in our new house, with our dog, And nobody's fighting anymore. I wrapped my arm around her. Me too. That night, I found her writing in her new journal, a habit she maintained not from fear or confusion now, but as a healthy outlet for her thoughts. New entry? I asked, setting a mug of hot chocolate on her desk. Gatway? I'm writing about Dad moving away, and how I feel about it. And how do you feel about it? She considered for a moment. Mostly okay. Like closing a chapter in a book that wasn't very happy, so you can get to the better parts of the story. I smiled at her metaphor. You're pretty wise for someone who still can't remember to put her dirty socks in the hamper. She grinned. Nobody's perfect, Mom. Looking back now, a year and a half after that courthouse revelation that changed everything, I'm amazed by how different our lives have become. The custody battle that once consumed us is now just a chapter in our story, not the whole book. My ex did move overseas, maintaining minimal contact through monthly video calls and sending birthday and Christmas gifts. They never did return for a summer visit, always finding reasons to postpone. Child support payments arrive reliably, the one consistent element of their parenting. My daughter has flourished in our new city, growing into a confident preteen with a passion for science and animal rescue. She still sees her therapist occasionally but has processed much of the trauma from those difficult years. As for me, I found unexpected purpose in sharing our experience. The conference talk led to more speaking engagements, and eventually, I helped develop a support program for children caught in high-conflict custody disputes. My contribution isn't legal or psychological expertise, but rather the perspective of a parent who's navigated these treacherous waters and emerged with a child whose spirit remained intact. Last week, my daughter came to one of my workshops for the first time, sitting quietly in the back as I spoke to a room of family court judges, lawyers, and child advocates. The most important lesson from our experience, I told them, is that children have their own truth, their own voices. When we give them safe ways to express that truth without fear of disappointing either parent, we honor their reality rather than forcing them to live in a distorted version created by adult conflicts. After the presentation, she joined me at the front of the room as people approached with questions and comments. "Are you the notebook girl?" one young lawyer asked her, eyes wide with recognition from the anonymized case study. My daughter smiled. "That was a long time ago. But yeah, that was me. You changed how I approach cases involving children," the lawyer told her earnestly. "Thank you for being so brave." Later, as we walked to the car, she was thoughtful. "It's weird being known for something that happened when I was little. Does it bother you?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, I'm glad something good came out of all that bad stuff. But it doesn't define me anymore, you know? It's just something that happened, not who I am." I squeezed her hand, overwhelmed with pride at her wisdom and perspective. "You're absolutely right. And that, perhaps, is the most important outcome of our ordeal. We survived it. We grew from it. But we didn't let it define us. The notebook that once saved us is still preserved as evidence somewhere, but its purpose has been served." My daughter found her voice that day in court, and she's been using it ever since, not just to protect herself, but eventually to help others. As for my ex, I've stopped trying to understand their choices or expecting them to become the parent our daughter deserves. Some people simply aren't capable of putting a child's needs above their own, and no court order can change that fundamental truth. Instead, I focus on filling her life with healthy relationships, stable support, and the unshakable knowledge that she is loved completely for exactly who she is. After all, that's what every child truly needs, not perfect parents, but present ones who help them learn to trust their own voice and speak their own truth. So much has changed since that day she pulled out her notebook in the judge's chambers. Our address, our city, our daily routines. But the most important change happened within us both, the quiet confidence that comes from standing in your truth and watching justice prevail. And for that unexpected gift, I remain grateful.